Hi, Josh from Rosman Computers. Today I'm going to give a review and some recommendations around two different machines about where to use them and when to use them. So we have the Apple MacBook Air, which has been around for a number of years now. It's had a number of upgrades and this is it in its current form. It comes in two main varieties and I'll explain what they are and what the differences are between them. And then we also have this very similar looking Windows based PC notebook. So I'll cover off on the specifications and what the differences are between them. Both of them are based on an Intel processor. The MacBook Air has, in these two base model varieties, has a 1.8 gigahertz Intel Core i5 processor. The Ollee, or this Windows Ultrabook, has an Intel Celeron dual core as a 1.1 gigahertz. So it's not as powerful in the process department, the brain department, as the Apple MacBook Air. But there are some big differences in price, and we'll come to that soon. They both have 1600 megahertz memory. The MacBook Air has 8 gig. The Windows-based Ultrabook here only has 4 gig. However, for most people, for what they'd be using this machine for, it would be more than sufficient. The MacBook Air comes in two storage variety, or two sizes in storage that's available. There's 128 gig and 256 gig as options. In this version here, this particular machine, effectively it has 160 gig worth of solid state storage or 288 gig worth of solid state storage. So it actually has a little bit more storage available in total. If you're comparing size for size, there is a little bit more available here. The screens are similar. They're both 13.3 inch screens. However, the Apple MacBook Air is a 1440 by 900 resolution screen. The Ultrabook here, the Windows-based Ultrabook, is a full HD 1920 by 1080 resolution. So it is full HD. The aspect is a little bit different. This is not quite as tall a screen, but it is a little bit wider. So you are getting a higher resolution with the cheaper machine here, the Windows-based machine. They're both aluminium chassis. Now, if you compare the two, the Apple is a slightly better build quality. But when you're comparing the price, this particular machine here, the Windows-based Ultrabook, is a lot better bang for buck, in my opinion, for the price, for what you would be using it for. Connectivity is very similar. So they both have two USB 3 ports. The Apple has a Thunderbolt, which also doubles as a mini HDMI display, mini display port. It has an SD card reader. It has headphone jack, Bluetooth, and dual band wireless. The Windows-based Ultrabook, on the other hand, has mini HDMI. So the real advantage of that is that you don't need to buy any extra special adapters. You just use a standard mini HDMI to HDMI cable, which will allow you to connect to pretty much most screens or modern projectors these days. It has a micro SD card reader compared to the Apple MacBook Air, which has an SD card reader. So most devices these days are using the micro SD card. So your phones, drones, or most devices are using the micro SD card. So an advantage of it is that you don't need to have the adapter to step it up from the mini or the micro SD card up to the full-size SD card. So you don't need to worry about remembering to take that with you everywhere you go. You just take the card out and plug it in. It has headphone jack, it has Bluetooth, and it has dual band wireless. Now, the price. The base model MacBook Air is $14.99. The base model in the Windows-based Ultrabook here is $5.99. So it's a $900 saving. I mentioned before, it's not as powerful in the processor, in the brain department, the processor department. But for where you would be using this machine, so in education or travel, for day-to-day use, surfing the internet, checking emails, this machine is far better value for money. If you are doing anything more intensive, then I would recommend the Apple over it. Once we step up, so same process, but once we step up into the larger storage, the 256 gig, you're looking at $17.99. Whereas the examples
of what programs would I have to be running to?
Anything that's a little more CPU intensive. So if you were going to use any of the Adobe suite, this machine's not for you. You could get away using the Adobe suite on this particular machine. That would be a good example. Or if you're working with larger Word documents, I would use this machine. If you're using it for university, maybe doing a thesis and you've got EndNote and a few other things connected to it, managing referencing and so forth, I would recommend this machine. But for general day-to-day use or an undergrad student at uni, this machine is absolutely perfect, and for the price, you wouldn't feel as bad if something happened to it.
Okay, so there must be warranty on it?
There's a 12-month warranty on it, and it's a full replacement warranty. So if something happens to it, we just swap it out. And the best part about it is we're also the authorised service agency. So we take care of the warranty here for you. To step up to the 288 gig storage, you're looking at only another $100. It's $699, so it goes from $599 to $699. If you compare that to the 256 gig version in the Apple, you're looking at $1799. So already there's an $1,100 saving. If I compare the weight between the two, surprisingly the cheaper one is just slightly heavier. It seems to me. I haven't actually weighed them, but we're splitting hairs. It's not going to break your back, the extra weight, that's for sure. Both are very light machines. They're both very well built. They're very robust. They have that aluminium chassis, as I mentioned before. I would recommend this machine if you're going to be doing any travel or you're going to be using it for education, particularly for younger students where carrying around a higher value machine is a bit risky for them. May make them a bit of a target, or they might be a little clumsy, as all of us can be from time to time. If I didn't want to suffer too much loss if something happened, or I wanted to prevent them being a bit of a target, because these are pretty desirable machines, the Apple Macs, I would say go with the Ultrabook in the Windows-based machine. Thanks for your time. So another main feature of these machines, and a lot of people, we get a lot of questions here at Rosman Computers about what's the battery life like. And Apple have always been very good at that. They're renowned for having long battery lives. And Apple claim that you're looking at around 12 hours with this particular machine, the MacBook Air. And I've put this Windows-based Ultrabook through its paces. I configured it and set it all up for out on our retail floor, and I spent an evening doing that, and I really put it through its paces, and I was very surprised. It's around 12 hours as well, and for a machine at this price, I was truly amazed at its performance and the battery life. At one point I thought I'd better plug it into the power because it was sitting at about 60%, and there was some intensive stuff I was about to do with imaging and so forth, getting it ready, re-imaging windows and things on it, and taking an image off it. And I actually hadn't turned the PowerPoint on, and it was just an oversight. And after I finished doing what I was doing, it was another 3 or 4 hours later, it was still sitting on about 45%, I believe. So it didn't even need me to do that. It went through all of that where other machines would have well and truly gone flat if I hadn't have turned it on. So I'd highly recommend this machine. If battery is of real concern to you, and being able to use it all day in an education environment or a travel environment, or use it for several days in a travel environment where you're just closing the lid, putting it in your bag, bring it out again, book flights, respond to emails, download some photos from your camera or phone, this is the machine for you. Available at Rosman Computers, Thirroul. Thank you.